Those are some of her bills that she voted for, or
These are what she's siding with.
okay.
Giovanni. Yes, and some brothers and, yes, cousins, okay. Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm the founder of the Parents Voice USA. And Esther? I'm Esther Wallace, and I'm a trustee for the Magnolia School District, and I'm also in the WAN group in West Anaheim. Do you want to explain the WAN group? Explain what the WAN group
The WAN
does.
group is a neighborhood group that was started 20 years ago to better West Anaheim, and we work on many different things like prostitution, buildings that was going on and so forth. But we put on the barbecue every year, we put on the tree lighting, and it's a neighborhood group, everybody gets to work, there's no cost for it. And we have our meetings on the second Wednesday of the month.
So this is, I'm just going to say it a little louder in case you didn't hear. It's Esther Wallace, and she's a trustee for our Magnolia School District, and they have a West Anaheim neighborhood development group. And they meet, so afterwards, if you want to meet more regularly, Esther's the one.
Thank you.
And I think
Don't
we
throw
can
me
get-
out this time, all right? I have. Don't be rude. Thank you. This guy threw me out for no reason.
He already tried to act like a fascist and make us remove our signs. You say they're still here.
Yep, that's right.
All right.
You got it. It could have been a lawsuit, buddy.
So, those of you who came in, as other people were introducing themselves, we have an array of people here, mostly from West Anaheim, but others representing different initiatives or points of view. So I'm going to ask, as sincerely as I can, please be respectful of each other, and please don't interrupt or shout out. I just think that if we really want to hear and learn from each other, we have to respect those rules, okay? Okay, well, I'm Assemblymember Sharon quirk-silva, and I represent this area. I represent all of Fullerton, Buena Park, West Anaheim, Cypress, La Palma, and Stanton. Each assembly member represents about 400,000 constituents. Mine goes from way up to Imperial Street, all the way down into Cypress. So you can see just with those cities, and not only their cities, but within the cities, there's very diverse community. Some people who have grown up in their cities, living 30, 40 years, other newer residents who maybe have just moved here. And to me, it looks like we have quite a few different neighborhoods here. I was a local representative in Fullerton for 8 years on the Fullerton City Council, 2 terms as mayor, a teacher for close to 30 years in elementary, and I have taught mostly the younger ones, so if some of those teaching things come out, I apologize, but K through 8 for over 30 years, and now this is my 5th year being elected to the California State Assembly. The State Assembly has changed quite a bit even since the time I started back in 2012, 2013. And that does bring out some concerns. So I'm just going to say right now, I know that there are concerns about the direction of California, or some people even say, all those Democrats up there. So I'll just acknowledge that as quickly as I can. There is a majority of Democrats right now in the state.
Super majority.
But what I will say is they come from a very different array. So you have everything from Democrats that are in very, very safe districts and can be classified as extremely progressive, to everything in between, to very centered. I would describe myself as a group that is growing in the state as a new Dem. And a new Dem, according to how we describe ourselves, are fiscally conservative and progressive on social issues. So that's how I describe myself, and that's the way I try to lead. Being on the local city council, even in the worst downturn in 2007 to 2008, we had to make some tough choices. That's when the bottom fell out. So one of the things that was very, very important to us was to keep a rainy day fund of 10% in the city of Fullerton. Since I've been at the state, we now have almost $14 billion rainy day fund. We know that that is definitely not enough for a huge tragedy or unforeseen incidents, as we've seen with the wildfires, as we've seen with the flooding, as we've seen with many of the things that have particularly happened up north, but also everything that is related to our environment and climate continues to change. So again, not saying that you have the same beliefs that I have, but whether you believe in climate change or not, what I would assume could agree on is we've seen weather patterns that we've never seen before. So one of the committees that I am on is actually communications and conveyance, and we will be looking at everything from utilities that are not underground, but that we still have most of our utilities above ground, to even how we clear forests. We've had for quite a long time, looking at the drought, where we have had the beetles, the drought, a lot of our forests have, the trees have fallen, and all of that clearing, if you're, you know, again, different philosophies. If you're really kind of in the Sierra Club mind, you might say just let them be there, and over time, they will do what nature wants them to do. But as we've seen with the drought, we need to start becoming involved in clearing forests and so forth. A huge issue this year that is going to be settled is the PG&E bankruptcy. Major time going into that. But also all of our other utilities, whether it's Edison, whichever provider we have, is looking at how are we going to use gas in the future, how are we going to use electricity. Along with the wildfires is also how do we respond to emergencies to the public. So for example, in the floods up in Santa Barbara last year, there were some reason to feel that had we had a better emergency response system, that we might have been able to save some lives, because some of the emergency response went out to some people who had opted in on their phones and other parts didn't. So there's going to be a lot of looking into that, a lot of hearings and so forth. So environment, water, utilities, those are all a big topic in the state of California. Another, you know, I'm not going to complain too much, but it's really hard and distracting when I'm trying to talk and you keep moving the signs, so do you mind just kind of...
I am not disrupting the meeting, and I have a right to position these signs. Thank you. And you'll understand one way when I ask.
Even though your staff tried to remove them. You failed, didn't you?
It's a First Amendment right.
You're a
Remember
failure.
we said we're not going to be confrontational, so
Well,
let's
you
just
should tell your
start
staff
going.
not to be confrontational
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Okay, so let me go on to the next major priority that was really actually discussed by the caucus, and we actually went through a process of trying to determine what would be the #1 issue for the caucus, the Assembly caucus. Remember, we have the Senate as well, and that is housing. And housing, that not only relates to building more housing, market rate, but it also relates to those experiencing homelessness, also the affordability of housing, and millennial housing. So you will see a huge amount of legislation put forward this year regarding housing. I'm on the housing committee, and it's going to be very controversial in the sense of the type of legislation that's coming out. I think there's some real exciting items and creative ways to deal with housing, so I'll mention a few. How many of you remember the granny unit or granny flats, or mother-in-laws, I guess you would call it? the updated term of that is ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units. And for many, many decades, people were allowed to build in their property, and people did build. Over the years, there have been more and more types of permits that were required that made it not as attractive to build. Or an example might be if you had a 2-unit, then you had to have 2 parking spaces, or how much square footage you could put. Right now, there will be a move towards not eliminating all of those, but making some of the barriers. For example, if you wanted to build ADU in Fullerton, the permits could be about $15,000 just to start to build on your property. For a lot of people, that's just too much. So there's going to be looking at how much the fees are, the parking spaces, and also do you have to live on the property? Because right now, if you want to build, you have to live on the property. So that will be, but the encouraging thing about this is that it will take existing land and allow people to use it to house, whether it be their family members, their millennials, teacher, and so we need that. We need more housing. Another issue that's going to come up, and it was on the ballot, but it's still going to come up no matter what. And if we could, I want to kind of take a real quick poll on this, but it's going to be rent control. So if you think rent control is a good idea, raise your hand. If you do not think rent control is a good idea, raise your hand.
Horrific idea.
Okay, so you can see we have a different opinion here. And that is going to be a very big issue that comes forward. We will be looking at it very careful. It went to the ballot and was voted down by quite a big percentage. So now because even if something is voted down on the ballot, it doesn't mean it goes away. So there are some authors bringing it back. So what then can happen is that legislation can come forward, but it doesn't have to just be absolute rent control. There could be amendments made that say, in this area or for this percentage, things like that. So you'll start to hear more about that. One of the things you're probably hearing a lot about, and if you haven't heard about, you've actually seen it evolve in the last handful of years in Orange County, is many who are experiencing homelessness, whether it's a single individual, whether it's a single male or female, families, seniors, and veterans. Those are all the numbers continue to continue to grow. And we have seen close to 260 individuals in Orange County die on the streets. And this is since last year. One of the startling things about that is that other counties like San Diego or Los Angeles that have also have homeless, our number is almost 3 to 4 times of theirs as their numbers are. So one of the fact finding is why? What is happening that in the last 3-4 years, when other communities are struggling with the same thing, why did we have close to 3 times in Orange County? And that is going to be looked into through the Sheriff's Department, pulling autopsies and looking at that. What is the cause? And so you'll hear more about that. But each city now, unlike even a year ago, has to have a plan for some type of emergency housing. They can go in together, and the county has been broken up in 3 areas. The North Spa, and spa means not what we think, but it means service provider area. So the North County would be Winter Park, Fullerton, Placentia, and Anaheim is on their own by choice. And then you have the Central Spa, which would be the Santa Ana, Orange, that area, and the South County Spa, San Clemente, Costa Mesa, Newport, Huntington. And in each of those spas, there has to be some type of emergency beds available, and then down the road, some type of permanent supportive housing. Right now, we're working very hard on, those are two parts of the puzzle for housing, but we have to have a place for what we call severely mentally ill, who could be a threat to themselves or to others. And in the entire county, we have 15 beds for what we call crisis stabilization. As you can tell, that is not enough beds, so we're going to be working very hard. And again, this is somebody you might see walking in the middle of the freeway, or 100 degrees having no shoes on, that you can clearly see that they need some type of help now. Right now, most of the time they go to the county jail, or they go to the emergency room. And neither of those places, it's costing us a huge amount of money, and they're not able to solve an issue just going in and out, in and out. So those are some of the things I'm working on. There were some papers passed around if you chose to. This paper has a list of many of the housing bills that I am